So we start off, as usual, with the prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Mastama Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy and strength. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace beyond all. So there's a question before us that starts off like this. Clearly we know we're not the body. I have to stop there because clearly we think we are the body. We don't know we are not the body. That's the problem. Not knowing this, we can know this in principle, but not knowing this in actuality is our difficulty. Now, it's not just the body that we think that we are, that we mistake ourselves for, but it's quite natural to make that mistake because it's what the eyes report. It's what all our senses are reporting, that this world is structured in various parts, with particles and individualities, and we are one of those. And then we have to set up a strategy opposed to other people, places, and events and try to survive as best we can. And we're not the only ones doing it. Every species, every organic species is doing it. But why would they want to do it? It is to preserve the physical, to preserve the body. Therefore, every creature does not have this recognition of their inner divinity. However, indirectly, it's there. We all know we exist. But when we examine what is existence, generally, we don't find it anywhere because of the changing nature of what we find in front. So somebody asks us, you have a car indicator to indicate left and right. And you ask somebody standing in front, is it working? The person says, yes, no, yes, no, because the indicator is going on and off. And there's no permanency for it. So a thinking person will recognize, just logically, there's no permanence for anything that we see. Still, we take this movie to be real and we get caught up emotionally as if and as we do in a movie. So as I say many, many times before, if you really slow things down and analyze what's going on in Hollywood, you'll see the cardboard scenery. You'll see stairs going up as far as you can see, but behind the scenes going down. You think it's going up 3-4 stories. You think that proper windows are there and so on and so forth, but it's not true. There's a very funny kind of series, if you will. I first saw it. Somebody showed me a YouTube video of the Royal Command performance, and there was an extract of something called The Play That Goes Wrong. So if you watch that, you'll find it's extremely funny because everything goes wrong in it. And yet the plot is very serious. It's about a murder. But soon you realize with all the errors and mistakes going on, that is actually just a drama. Well, it's not even well crafted. And when you see an amateur performance, you can recognize some of the components. Somebody forgets their lines. Somebody accidentally knocks a cardboard clock over and the whole scenery goes down. All kinds of events can happen. All kinds of things can happen. So the fact of the matter is that although we clearly think we are the body, it's not the opposite. And therefore we behave as if the body is real. But indirectly, we have this self-consciousness. We have this idea that I exist. We can't imagine anything averse to that. We can't imagine death. We can't imagine that we are dead. You can imagine that you're lying on a slab in a dream, something like that, and people are coming to your funeral, but there's always some entity that's watching it. That observer is neither coming nor going, is simply watching it. So how do we get out of this syndrome is the key question. This what we might call prophet-actor complex. We were reading a passage earlier from Karma Yoga. And the secret of Karma Yoga is to take our actions, but to be detached from the future results or fruits of these actions, because that's what gives us anxiety and disturbance. Constantly worrying about what will happen in the future, when in fact it hasn't even arrived yet. So it's a non-entity, a kind of mirage. So we have to carefully craft a way of getting out of this drama, or recognizing it for what it is and getting out of it. And that is called spiritual life. Yesterday or last night I gave a talk on what spiritual practice. What is spiritual practice? Yeah. Well, the key is in the answer practice, something that is repeated over and over and over again. Not just in terms of the practice, but in terms of the principles, because if there are no well understood principles, you won't be able to practice anything. Now, the Upanishads give us repetition over and over again. And every Upanishad gives us a different angle about the same truth. And every talk I give and every question I answer, I'm not saying anything new. In fact, a lot of what I'm saying, people will understand, oh, he said this before. I recognize this story. I recognize this event. All right? But I'm not afraid to repeat it. We only learn by repetition. It has to be drummed into us, actually. And the only way is to repeat the principles. There's a value of teachers, the value of scripture. It's the value of constantly dealing with the world and making a separation, like separating a flower from a stalk. We have to look at the world and not take for granted that we understand it. No, we don't understand. We understand very little about it. You may say, but it doesn't puzzle us. We can know more and more about the universe and about the world. In an effort to find out the depths of space, there is a Webb, James Webb telescope that has just been launched. It has an arrangement where the protected area, the area that will screen out things and will increase the capacity of the telescope, is a series of folded sections, like origami. And I read today that can't fit into a spacecraft, so it's designed so cleverly that once it finds its locality, it is able to unfold bit by bit. And what a wonderful, marvelous feat of engineering that is. Now, you can look back in time, but is time itself real? And we know that there's an A and B theory of time, and we know that in the divine area, everything is timeless. There's not an entity sitting in the heavens and timing our performance, or watching what is the time, what is the universal clock. At what time will I dissolve the entire universe? At what time will I recreate it? From that entity's point of view, there's no time. So I told some funny story like that. See, there's a person who wants to advance well in life, be successful, manages to catch God and make a conversation. And he's curious. So, what is 1,000 years of human life in your divine realm? The Lord of the universe says, oh, it's a few seconds. And then he says, okay, what about €1,000,000? How much is that worth in your realm? Or he says a few pennies, maybe 1 penny, or 1 cent. Or he says, in that case, may I have 1,000,000 cents? And the Lord says, okay, wait a few seconds. So Lord's area and our area different. That gives us the opportunity to sit from time to time where the Lord sits and beam from there and see how does it look from his point of view or its point of view. The world looks very different. We see the world as problematic. But the Lord of the universe doesn't see it like that. Now, the interesting thing is, when you stand in the area of cosmic mind, you're standing in a commanding position so that anything can be granted. One thought will do it. One confident thought that is emitted from that cosmic mind, understanding we only have that mind. What we call my mind, your mind, is just a substation. It's just like a transistor catching the universal broadcast, catching that small part, what we call, as I described yesterday or last night, as chitta, containing what we say as localized waves and oscillations called vrittis. That chitta, that mind stuff, it just happens that the universal mind is caught up for the time being, as it were. And we always have to add, as it were, things are not quite what they seem. So this constant valuation has to take place. You constantly discern. And when we constantly discern properly, then we get out of the difficulty to some extent. To some extent, because if you have to practice something, you're not there yet. What is knowledge? Knowledge is the cessation of the necessity to repeat something. You don't get up in the morning and say, my name is this, my name is Swami Purnananda, my name is Swami Purnananda. By midday, I might forget. Let me say it a few thousand times. No, when you know it, you know it. Somebody says, what's your name? You don't have to say, oh, wait, let me research my reference library. I'll get back to you tomorrow. No, instantaneously, you can tell it. So when we know something, we don't have to repeat something. And then all your spiritual practice, all your tapasya, all finished, all gone, because you no longer have to repeat it. That's a big ask. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen frequently. It's a rare person that gets to that stage where I no longer have to repeat. I no longer have to do any spiritual practice. I am there. I've reached the mountain peak. I've reached the highest of the high. And from there I can beam. What will you beam? You'll beam all goodness and love and truth and beauty and goodness to everybody indiscriminately. You'll have no enemies. So you'll have only recipients of divine grace. You'll be an open channel for a flow of divine grace flowing everywhere to everyone, like a joyful light beaming everywhere, like a lighthouse that beams its light in one quarter, then the next quarter, then the next quarter. But when you see where it's coming from, then the light is only is there. It's only the shield that is going round the light. Light is always there, but it's the shield that is going round, looking as if it is a light that switches on and off, or that is only in this area, not in this area. So we have to learn that, and we have a number of advantages. Humanity itself is an advantage. If you understand from the Vivekashudamani how fortunate we are to get a human birth. It's a very rare thing. It doesn't matter how depraved the human is or how advanced the human is. The fact of the human birth means we are extremely fortunate. We've gone through millions and billions of births, even from the time of an amoeba, the time of bacteria, and all of that is accumulated experience. And the technical term for all that accumulated experience is called samskara. We're not saying it's good, we're not saying it's bad. It's a sum total of all our experience, filed away and expressed. Why should it be expressed? It is expressed because in the language of Jesus, it is there to express the glory of the Godhead or the Godhood. Once a blind man who was blind from birth was brought before Jesus, and the Pharisees asked him, tell me, Rabbi, Master, this man is blind from birth. Was it his fault? Was it his sin? Or was it the sin of his parents? It's another way of asking, was this genetically caused by his parents? Or was it his own karma? But he's blind from birth. How could it be his own karma unless some previous karma was there? Then what is this term karma? It's a misunderstanding, generally put, generally interpreted as fatalism. It's your fate. So we have to correct this term. I prefer vernacular terms such as sowing and reaping, cause and effect. If you sow something, you'll reap it. If you sow weeds, you'll get weeds. If you sow wheat, you'll get wheat. If you sow goodness, you'll reap goodness. If you sow resentment and badness and doubt, you'll sow that also. It's entirely up to you. Our entire personality and physical makeup is made up of learned behavior that is learned from previous times, previous occasions, that unfortunately we put in physiological terms and call it instinct. No, it's all learned behavior. The university is a university of life, and that university that we call nature gives us unlimited lessons and unlimited opportunities for us to advance. So what we call evolution is this taking on the learned lessons in a cumulative way so that it is expressed as an effect. In the human case, it's called human evolution, the human body. Millions and millions of births we would have had to have taken. But Shankaracharya then adds, having gotten this body, don't waste it. Actually, wasting this without accessing your own freedom from the limitations of our body and mind is equivalent to so much suicide. Then if you analyze what is the body, can we give an example of discrimination? Yes, we can do it. What is the body? It's just made of organic tissues, that's all. It's made of millions and millions of cells, all working in a cooperative, coordinated way around a central theme, a central owner, and they derive its life from that. This owner or this life, collectively called prana, energy. And the energy was seen to be distributed in 5 different ways, acting as physical governors. That is, one aspect, prana, moving things upward, apana, moving things and governing things downward. Samana, regulating digestive distribution and assimilation. Udhana, arranging things upwards from the lungs upwards. And then what about, or the throat upwards? And then what about dhyana, regulating the circulatory system? But it's really only one energy. When we reduce everything to one thing, then we know we're getting closer to the truth. So there's a beautiful description of this body. What is it made from? Well, and we're not looking for squeamish people. We're just stating a fact. It's made from bile. It's made from mucus. It's made from a framework of bones. It's made from, filth. It's made from everybody's carrying around their septic tank. This is not told to people in a romantic liaison, sitting with each other across the candlelight, using the inbuilt genetic trend. Oh, you fell in love with somebody yesterday? Yes. What was the attraction? Oh, the eyes. Oh, you fell in love with molecules? Just mere cells. But those same eyes will look dead. They'll have no exhibition of life. When that life leaves the body and carries the experience over forward to another body, another life, another opportunity, and there's always a forward movement. It's only us who voluntarily can make a regression, make a backward slide. And it takes a highly depraved person to really go back. Go back meaning so depraved, so evil, that one gets born as an insignificant insect, says the theory. But we can become gods. We have to access our own divinity. We have to unfold the life that we have until we realize our true nature. And this principle, while it may be understood intellectually or from scripture or from a teacher, has no value unless we actually experience this separation from body self, mind self. We have to cultivate that. Now, supposing we have a feeling that we are the body and we can't get rid of it. Well, the key to the way out is not to attend to it at all, to ignore it, but to have a different way of viewing yourself or this body and a way of viewing others. Practicing the presence of the divine by seeing, nay, feeling that divinity in all beings. Whenever you see an eyes being lit up, the very reason why you may be attracted to it is because inside is a light that is shining through the eyes. Isn't that a phrase? The eyes are the windows of the soul. When we see the eyes shining, we should see, Lord, you are there, glimmering, shining. Therefore the eyes shine. Therefore speech occurs. Therefore movement occurs. Registering it well. So for the embodiment, for the embodied, for those who are feeling embodied, the vast majority of humanity, we have to cultivate what is called love of God. And it's not that it's a God above the clouds or in the heavens. No, it's a God that sits in the heart of every being. And we can see that not only is it inside, but it's also around, it's also through. And then ultimately our conclusion is, it's as well and beyond. So first we build a scaffolding to build a building or renovate a building. We went to a place today, and part of the place, a very famous place, is screened with scaffolding. But it's not there forever. Once the scaffolding is removed, then the shining new facade of the building is presented. So we start off with building a scaffold, step by step. Patience is required. These three things are required, according to Swami Vivekananda: purity, patience, and persistence. Never stop. Don't stop until the goal is reached. Continue. The minute you're anxious about spiritual progress is no longer progress. It's either static or regressed. Because spiritual life is not like a career. It's not like a move towards success. Not at all, nothing of that nature. It's an unfolding. And it's to do with growth. You can't go outside and command a flower, taking it by the head. Come on, today we're going to grow 2 inches. First of all, the plant won't understand a word you're saying. But all that growth comes from inside. Somehow, there's a capacity within the flower, within the plant, to draw up nutrients from the soil. No one asked it to do it. We never read a manual. And somehow, through capillary action, come up and distribute its life essence into all the leaves and branches and so on. And ultimately knows the time when a bud should appear, responding to the environment, the seasons, and then ultimately developing into a flower. And that flower has a generosity of spirit that is able to share itself with all, opening its heart, if you like, its flower heart to all, sharing itself, the spirit of generosity, making this little ego an open channel for divine grace to flow everywhere. Such people are there. But we have to get away from the idea that this body has any other value except an instrumental one. They're a wonderful instrument, highly complex instrument, very, very complex, and well designed, if you will, and yet very fragile. One strike of a sword can end a life. One bullet can end a life. We all know this too well by the fact that we know people. And certainly if we don't know people personally, we know of people who have succumbed to the COVID virus. And there's this urgency then to preserve life coming from a sense, I exist. Undeniable sense of existence. And so fundamentally, we know that we are this immortal spirit. Right deep down, it's there. But it's all diverted. The attention is diverted, and all this is screened from us by taking this world as seriously as we do, and creating some strategy that will deal with it, that ultimately puts us into a syndrome and doesn't advance us any further until life impinges on us and pricks us a little bit. There's every reason why the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is to do with depression, despondency. We learn much more from pain than we do from any other thing. So that's a very valuable chapter. I've said in many occasions, some people want to start off with the teaching in the second chapter. No, please take the first chapter. Of course, it gives a background to the whole thing, but it also gives us the condition, the psychological condition that Arjun finds himself in. A state of near nervous breakdown. All the symptoms are there: shaking, can't hold his bow, trembling. So what is his solution? Let me get out of the situation. What is Krishna's solution? Dive into the situation. To dive into the situation requires clarity, requires courage, requires strength. These are the key virtues in spiritual life. Requires a new way of looking at things. What is that new way? To see the Lord of the universe contained in every heart. Of course, it's not phrased like that in the beginning. In the beginning, it's phrased as this self, the immortal self. But then in the 12th chapter, Sri Krishna talks about the formula for the embodied. That is, those who feel, I am the body. And to say I'm in the body can also be misleading. No, there's no framework like that. There's no cage. You're not a bird in a gilded cage. The song goes, but a bird in a gilded cage. No, nothing like that. You can't look up and see the epiglottis. You can't look down and see the hollows of the legs. You can't look on one side and see the kidneys. So it's not inside in that sense. It's inside in the sense of subtlety. Unseen because it's subtle. And it is within everything. If we are able to screen out all the peripheral stuff. But when we screen that out and get to this real fundamental self, a realization dawns. Now Ramakrishna's language has a beautiful example. Once you go up to a roof, you have to go up through steps. Imagine going up to steps and reaching the roof. You can imagine a flat top roof, such as they have maybe in India. Steps have to go up, and they're made from brick or concrete or mortar. But when you get to the roof, you see it's the same stuff. It's also bricks, it's also mortar, it's also concrete. The steps and the roof are the same thing. So don't think that the steps or this world is different. This world is not an inhibition. This world is an avenue. This world is a means. This world is like an open valley toward what we want to realize. We have to use every aspect of it. We have to not waste any moment of it. We have to understand the inner essence of it and catch the joy and ride the wave like a surfer, not being affected by the water, riding on the top skillfully. When a wave comes, maneuver your board and catch it. Use the wave. Somebody who's not skilled in this will allow the wave to overcome them. They'll be overwhelmed by it. But one who's learnt the skill will wait patiently for an opportune moment. Not only catch the curve of it and ride the wave, but enjoy the process too. There are many young men and women who have decided almost to make a career of the surfing. And they go all over the world, some of them in Hawaii, some of them in Australia, not many in Ireland, I have to say. Although there are waves, surfing waves on the West Coast also. Traveling all this world, what would they want to do? Just the thrill of catching the wave. That's all. What is your job? Catching the thing, receiving the thrill of catching the wave, and allowing the wave to surge me forward. I'm not doing anything. I'm only using my balance, using my judgment, using my skill, and moving along with the wave. That's all. So, in the same way, we have to use this approach in life. And that is why Krishna doesn't say to Arjun, "Come, my friend, I understand your suffering. Please lie down on the couch here in front of me. Tell me all about your miserable childhood. Tell me how your father was, how your mother was. Tell me what a black day it was when you were born, and all this kind of thing, and how you can reform things." Nothing like that. Just get up, be strong, face the world, but with a new understanding that it's not your enemy. Previously, you thought it was your enemy. Now, Krishna says, you yourself are your own enemy. You're your own best friend. You're your own worst enemy. Whatever you do, it will affect you, nobody else. Supposing you think of the most delicious meal, you can spend a few seconds salivating over it, see, wishing that it was here. But in no time at all, saliva flows in the mouth and gastric juice flows in the stomach. The power of thought. But the effect is on the human body. That's the first thing. And then, because the human body has its magnetic field, it then affects others around you. Supposing you go into a social situation and you decide that you want to be miserable. I once saw a film, a documentary on Paul Getty. Paul Getty was one of the richest men in the world. You probably heard from me what his formula was for success. Get up early in the morning, work hard, go to bed late at night. Most importantly, strike oil. That's the last part where most people have difficulty. But you see, he lived alone, he was miserly and very unhappy. Now you may say it was the wealth that made him unhappy, but I would say no. Wealth doesn't make you unhappy. Wealth is just an object, it's just something which is there. You can't blame an object for your unhappiness. It's your own internal condition that you have to adjust. And the adjustment means we have to adjust it in situ. When a situation arises, we have to address it there and then. We can't leave it. Supposing in a football team, somebody says to you, you see, you're good at head, but you're not good at passing. But we're only going to tell you this after 1 year. And we'll coach you for improvement after 1 year. We keep it from you for a year. And then on an annual report basis, we'll tell you. That won't be of any use. The correction has to be there. It has to be then. It has to be in situ. As it arises, deal with it. If you don't, you'll be sitting in meditation and growling at God. There's no point doing that. Like driving, as soon as the car goes off to the left, you adjust it immediately to the right. You don't wait for a year. You don't wait for somebody else to come in. You don't put in your diary and say, oh, I must attend to that in 1 week's time. You'll be in the ditch. So this is the art of guiding thought. You have to learn that. You have to make sure that we are continuously aware. What condition is the mind? Now, condition of the mind can be in one of three states. Either it can be full of lack of enthusiasm, lazy, dormant, a kind of darkness where passions take over to the extent that it clouds everything over with darkness. That's one condition of the mind. You can easily notice it if we have a will to. But if we enjoy that condition, then we put ourselves deeper into the mire of ignorance. Another condition will be bubbling, enthusiastic, active, go-getter, all orientated toward results. Let me work hard, let me earn this, let me earn that, let me get a better salary. All good in principle. But when you add for me, therein lies the difficulty. And that, just as the previous one, would just give enormous pain. Just to illustrate, if a lion is alert in the African bush and a deer is not alert in the African bush, then the deer will become food for the lion. So it's a constant vigilance that we have to be constantly aware of, constantly mindful of. At any given moment, where do we find the mind being molded? What is its characteristics? What is its color and its flavor at any given moment? We can declutch the whole thing with the spirit of compassion, generosity, spirit of service. And where does that come from? Seeing the Lord in everyone and in everything. Love thy neighbor as thyself, says Jesus, but never expanded on it. There must be some reason, some rationale. Yes, thy neighbor is thyself. The first entity that gets affected by your thought is yourself, physical self. And then the subtle version of it is the internal self, the subtle body. Shukshma Sharira is called subtle body. That becomes affected. It's that carries forward. Takes all your luggage with you, whatever it may be. But don't complain. You packed your luggage. You know, at the airport, they ask you, did you yourself pack this? You can't say, no, somebody else did it. Yes, I packed it. I know what's in it. Some people have difficulty with that, you see. They'll say, oh, actually, if they were honest, say, actually, my wife did it or my friend did it. Somebody did it for me. But you can trust it, don't worry. So we have to know what's in our luggage. It means we have to pack it extremely carefully. And then it's sent on. You don't have to worry about it. At the airport, once it's on the conveyor belt and into the luggage hold, we're completely oblivious what happened to it. We don't sit and worry. I wonder if they put the luggage in. Thinking that maybe we heard many reports that it gets summarized, you know. So landed in Buenos Aires, luggage in Madrid. That becomes a difficult thing. So don't listen to all those stories. Don't listen to people inserting doubts. Be confident enough that all is well. Julian of Norwich, I keep quoting, all is well and all is well and all manner of things will be well. We'll leave it like that. Why should we bother about it? It's no longer our business. Once we insert the thought, it's no longer our business, provided it's positive. If it's negative, then we have to shift and change it. We have to make a surplus of pluses. And we do that by rearranging the world in our own mind's eye and seeing it as God sees it. Sitting on his throne from time to time, catching his vision, catching his goodness, catching his omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience. Even for a moment, we can do that. And you see that cosmic mind is a blessing entity, beaming everywhere, like a generous light everywhere. So the question of, as it was phrased originally, see, knowing that we are not the body, no, that we actually think we are the body. We don't know it at all. If we knew it, game over. Nothing more to do. Knowledge is the antidote to ignorance. We want the knowledge. But what is knowledge? Knowledge is the real felt understanding, the reality of the understanding, not just what we heard somewhere or we read somewhere. So I hope that answers the question. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a few more moments, like about 15 minutes. Are there any more questions?
Swamiji? Yeah, I have a question. I'd like you to, maybe this is not the forum, but the perception may be, when I read the Gospel of Sri, or elements of it, there may be a thought that everybody just went around and meditated all day and reached samadhi and never did anything else. That they were, they were holy people and that was their life. But I don't think that's the truth. They obviously were involved in a lot more work, pastoral work or physical labor. I'm not sure, but I'd just love to know, what was that lifestyle when Sri Ramakrishna was alive and he had his disciples around him?
So if a person says, I'm in samadhi the whole day, it means they were sleeping. And sleep is not samadhi. So no, there is sufficient people around Sri Ramakrishna to know that the bulk of those who were attending on him and visiting him and so on were all householders, all occupied in some occupation or other. The great example of a great saint, householder saint, was Nag Maharshi. Nag Maharshi was a great saint. Actually, Swami Vivekananda rates Nag Maharshi as a saint above all saints, and yet he was a householder. See, what were people doing? Don't forget, the Gospel of Ramakrishna was a recording of events on holidays or weekends. It was only the intimate students or the intimate disciples, some of them, not all of them, who were given the secret doctrines, if you will, were attended to in their spiritual life. When you read the biographies of these, that's why we celebrate these 16 monastic disciples, because when you read the biographies, you get an insight not only to their holy lives, but you also get an insight into Ramakrishna. You get into this insight on the things that happened away from the weekends, away from the public celebrations. Now, what was it like to be around Ramakrishna is an interesting question and useful for our meditation. Because one useful form of meditation is to take your chosen ideal and ask the various questions. How did that entity walk? What did they say? How did they speak? How did they sit? This question is asked in the Bhagavad Gita itself. This person of what is described as steady wisdom. How did they behave? How do we recognize such an entity? And so Ramakrishna would have been adaptable. We can see that clearly from episodes in the Gospel of Ramakrishna. He had the capacity to teach people on their level. What's the point of a teacher if a teacher cannot come to a person's level? If a teacher sits on a pedestal and spouts high philosophy, high-fluting philosophy that only university professors can grasp, what's the use of such a thing? So he used stories, he used parables that were familiar to the people around him and familiar to us too. We can visualize the role setting. Imagine now sitting in Dakshinaswar and listening to the words of the Master. Let's imagine arriving now, for example, in Dakshinaswar. We arrive by boat. We climb the steps of the Ghat. We heard there's a holy person there. Anyway, we can't find any person to ask. Naturally, we go and visit the Holy of Holies, the inner Garbha. And there in the inner Garbha, that is the womb, that is the central shrine, that is a small area, and yet on top of it is built many towers, giving a certain dignity and gravitas and to the importance of what is taking place there. And we go and give our obeisance there, thinking this was the very place that this great man would have had many visions and would have engaged in priestly duties there in a most unorthodox way. We heard this from somebody. Then we go and visit the place where music is normally played, and we go and visit all the other places, still wondering. Then we find somebody. There's a holy man who stays here. Where is he? Oh, you see these Shivalinga temples. Beyond that, you see the river Ganga. You see the corner room, that's where he stays. If you knock on the door, maybe he'll invite you in. You get to it, and before you knock on the door, you see the door is open, and there, sitting on a bed, is that great holy man. His eyes almost half closed, but he acknowledges your presence. Then he waves to you, please sit. You sit. Naturally, being a holy man, being a reverence, you prostrate, make a prostration. Then he says, he makes inquiries. What is your name? Where do you come from? What's your occupation? Where do you live? What do your family do? Has this been the first time you came to visit the temple? Who told you about this place? All of these things. And then he looks at you with loving eyes. You know he's looking at you as if he looks through glass, and he's weighing you up, and he knows every inch of your past history and your being. And then says some kindly sweet words. And then he reaches behind and catches a sweetmeat. And he breaks a portion off. You want to take it, but he says, let me feed it. Let me feed it to you myself. He puts it lovingly in your mouth like a mother feeding a child. And instantly you feel a thrill about it. Instantly you feel an elevation of spirit, an inner joy. And you know this joy will be lasting, at least for the next few days. And you're reluctant to leave the place, and you want to sit there. And the holy man starts talking, and you have no idea what he's saying, because all your attention is focused on his beaming face and the sweetness of his tone of voice and his voice. And you feel the beaming love that is emanating from every pore. And it's like a magnet. And you are mesmerized, sitting there in a mesmerized way and bathing in the glorious sunshine of the glory of Sri Ramakrishna. Now everybody can make that construction, that mental construction, with any of a person's Ishtadevatas. You can do it with Krishna. You can do it with Ramakrishna. You can do it with Jesus. You can imagine walking along the Sea of Galilee. And then we all stop for something to eat. You bathe the master's feet and you offer him some food. And then you listen, and the master is saying something about the kingdom of heaven within you. And he's also telling a story, a parable. The kingdom of heaven is like, and he goes on a story. But his face is so beautiful, so captivating. You hardly hear the story. You catch a few words, and you think to yourself, you know, at some point, I will have to tell other people the story that he told me. Let me pay more attention. And then the meal is cleared. And then the master says, let us go up onto the hill. And you see in the distance crowds. Oh, Jesus of Nazareth is there. Let us go and see what he has to say. But the master is looking for solitude. He wants to teach us how to pray. You see, all of this drama can be reconstructed. And in doing this, you get a glimpse into what was it like. This was the question. What was it like? We can easily catch what it was like. And in doing this, it becomes a meditation for us.
Very helpful. Thank you, Swamiji.
You see, if you have a chosen ideal, the only way you can feel the intimacy of this is to understand every detail. In what tone did they speak? How did they speak? What were their mannerisms? What did they do? So now talking about samadhi, thinking that the whole of things, the whole of life around Ramakrishna was just samadhi. No, he must have given practical advice. Now we find it all echoed in the life of Holy Mother. The Holy Mother didn't spend her life all the time in samadhi. What did she do? What every housewife does, what every woman does, what every person does in a rural setting. Making food, cooking with a sense of joy, possibly humming as she's doing it, and surrounded by so many domestic problems, and yet staying above it all, and having time to be the mother to thousands and thousands, hundreds and hundreds of people, looking for solace, looking for diksha. And she was mother to all. She said, always know you have a mother. Know this, you always have a mother. You always have a mother. Above everything else, being a mother. A disciple coming, she feeding with her own hands. Then he wants to take away the leavings. She says, and she, before he knows what's happening, she's taken it all. And he's protesting. Says, no, 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 you are my son. Let me do this for you. And when the disciple leaves after some days in her company, she takes him to the border and with tears in her eyes, waves her hand, reluctant to see her child leave. This is normality. But normality is spirituality. There's no secular and spiritual life separate. All of our life is spiritual. Depends how we handle it.
This question isn't very clear, but I suppose it was something to do with what you said earlier. And, you know, how we go into a different body and have a different life. But would there be a stage in a life where everybody is at a certain consciousness so that there is more peace and harmony externally in the whole world? If everybody's raised their consciousness and has a more pure outlook on life.
Yeah, so let me make a correction. I don't think I ever said that we go into another body. So supposing, I presume that in the winter time you put an extra coat on, is it? No?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. I presume when you get into the warmth, you take it off again. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So did you go into the coat or the coat go into you or anything like that? No. You put it on, you took it off.
Okay.
Okay. So now supposing you realize I can have the capacity to do that, I can put it on, I can take it off. I'm full and free, nothing can capture me, nothing can constrain me, nothing can limit me or condition me. Then you will be a beacon of love and peace and light and life. But how many people are like that? Now, supposing everybody is like that, then the world becomes completely transformed, no doubt. May more and more people be like that. And when an incarnation comes, a giant wave comes and presents the possibility for all of us being like that. Some take it up, others ignore it. Those who take it up will be swept along nicely in this wave of peace and love. It's up to us whether we want to be recipients of it or not.
Thank you, Swami.
See, the whole problem is selfishness. The whole problem with land and conflict is selfishness. I think I told many times probably, I facilitated a meeting at Trinity College where we went today. And there were a group of Israelis, Palestinians who came along, members of minority groups who really want to get on well together. And I was asked to facilitate the meeting. And I said, well, I'm not Jewish and I'm not Christian. And they said, no, for that reason, we want you to facilitate. Then I told them Ramakrishna's story in the group. You know, we had group breakouts. So I was with one of them. And I said, you see, let me tell you a story. It's not my story. It belongs to a wise mystic, 19th century mystic, never mind. See, God laughs on two occasions, never mind about the first one. The second one is when two brothers fight over land. This is my land. No, this is my land. This is my Gaza Strip. This is my Palestine. This is my Israel. Why do you want to know why he laughs? Because he says, my dear sons, it's my land. It has nothing to do with you. So we can't say this is my body. We can't say this is my mind. We can't say this is my house. We can't say this is my job. None of it belongs to us. Patiently, God allows us to do it. But the realization should be is nothing to do with us, nothing, not even a single breath belongs to us. We have no ownership over anything. With a sense of love, God allows us, please, if you want it to be yours and take ownership, so be it. But actually, this is my land, this is my body, this is my mind. This is my sitting room called the mind, my vehicle called the body. When we learn to take it in that way, we have a completely different approach. So Sri Ramakrishna never ever used the word I except on one occasion. That's recorded by Holy Mother, where she says, I only heard the Master once refer to I, first person singular, when he declared that he would be worshipped. I would be worshipped in every home. That was his prophecy. And she said that's the only occasion where he used the word I. Otherwise, it was this, where he referred to himself as the pillowcase, or that, or whatever. He never said I. You see how literally he understood this question of this avoidance of a prophet-actor complex, a prophet-actor-owner complex. It's not that he withdrew from the world. Very curious saint and sage. People who went to him expected him to be in sackcloth and ashes and dressed in a certain way, expected him to be disinterested in life and work and nature and things around. But all of his advice was practical. And he went to the theater, he went to the zoo, he went to museums, he went to a photographic shop. He enjoyed life to the fullest because he saw the extra dimension in it. He saw the leader in it. He saw the play in it. When he saw a drunken person, he never waved his finger in admonition. He went, joined arm in arm, and danced with the person. Imagine. Because it reminded him of spiritual ecstasy. No word of criticism left his mouth. It was all love, helpfulness, elevating the human spirit, not bringing it down in any way. So it would be good to emulate it. And you see, that is the key, to take a spiritual life and knowing it is a very high ideal, knowing we may not match up to it, and yet at least making the ascent, at least climbing the ladder as best we can. That's all we can do. And with every movement toward that divine grace flows to us in abundance. Every few steps toward it is met with 100 steps in our direction from it. If we say, may the world be a peaceful place, we're also saying the world is in turmoil, conflict, and disaster. It only means that we listen to the BBC too much. That's all it means. There are other things to listen to. There are other things to see. There are things which are all around us, which are all positive and good. As soon as we highlight the negatives, then we're conditioning the unconscious mind in that direction. And the unconscious mind acts as a sucking mechanism. Thought has a magnetic facility around it. Thought is a suction. Thought brings things toward itself. We can use that to our advantage and be a magnetic suction for all good things, noble things. See that phrase, may noble thoughts come to us from all sides, says the Rigveda. It's a wonderful prayer. May noble thoughts come to us from all sides. May you have peace, so Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.